Triumph Street Triple RS 2024. I bought one. Let's talk about it. So I needed a bike to do some coaching on the East Coast. I've got stuff on the West Coast. Now I need stuff on the East Coast. It's complicated. And man, the choices of bikes nowadays are nuts. There's so many. And yeah, I kind of struggled a little analysis paralysis with figuring out which bike I wanted. So yeah, I ended up buying this, and in this video we're gonna go through a bunch of stuff, right? We're gonna talk about my history with Triumph, what bikes I was looking at, other bikes I was looking at, this particular bike that I bought, my first couple of days on it, what I did. We'll go through all the different aspects of the bike. And yeah, there's a lot of subjective opinion there, but I also want to dive into the data. And we're going to do it very simply with data. We're going to look at a lot of GPS speed data versus other bikes. And you can see some of the things that reconcile with my subjective feelings and where the next steps are. So let's just get after it. So yeah, it's funny when I've had a kind of a long relationship with Triumph, even though I kind of didn't realize it. But 2006, I had a client that we ran 675s on an amateur race team, and we had a bunch of kit parts. Yeah, a new up and coming racer. Had really good luck with those bikes. I did an endurance race with him on one of the bikes. Had a great time. Loved the bike, and always have just been a fan of the very easy nature of the motor, the narrowness of the machine. Just really liked it. Fast forward 2011, Nick Einoch hosted the North America launch for the 675R and the new Speed Triple at that time. We hosted the launch, right? We did the street ride, we did the track riding. We spent a lot of time with Triumph, getting to know the brand, and it was really cool. So I had a bunch of time on the bikes back then. Yeah, just really enjoyed them. And then after that, I ended up with some clients that had bikes, different versions, right? We had some Daytonas, 675Rs, and then 765, right? The Moto 2, a lot of street triples. So I ended up just always remembering how much I liked those bikes. And yeah, this ended up organically kind of coming to the top of the list. So yeah, let's get into it. So for people that don't know, yeah, I've done a lot of road testing in my career. For almost 10 years, I tested for Road Racing World Magazine, did a little bit of stuff at Sport Rider back in the day. But yeah, so I've spent a lot of time as somebody who's road tested bikes, and understand that process pretty well. So I'm going to use some of that here. Some of it is just kind of my own little flair, but yeah. So first of all, why naked bike? And I started riding naked bikes in 2009 when the Yamaha school opened up, and we thought, what is this thing? And then we all rode it and went, oh my God, this why have we not been riding bikes like this? And to this point, I have a ton of miles on FZ1s, love them. And honestly, they're really still a very high water benchmark for a good coaching bike. They're easy to ride. The Tuo platform is the best. They never break. Incredible bikes. And yeah, you can do a lap time on them, but lap time, especially with all the new stuff coming out, we lack a little bit of speed with them. And they do definitely suffer in the mid corner, which we'll talk about. So yeah, I still wanted something naked. I sold my G6R 1000, had a newer G6R 1000, sold it a little while ago, and had kind of gone back to that sport bike. And the problem for that type of platform for me is I want to haul ass, right? I want a lap time, and it's not. I want a lap time on this bike too. Don't get me wrong, but what I struggle with, yeah, it's trying to have an ultimate lap time rather than set something up for a really good coaching bike. So yeah, I'm just as bad as everybody else in that regard. So yeah, I really like this type of a platform. So the other bikes I looked at, of course, I looked at another FC1 and thinking about, I'll just bring an FC1 out here. This will work out great. Thought about it and thought, no, I definitely want something more modern. I also have a lot of time on the FC10/MT10 platform and have gone really well on that bike. And I understand that bike well. And that was also at the top of my list. Problem with the MT10 is it takes a lot of work for a lap time. I mean, they stock, they don't work that well. Sorry. So you end up having to spend quite a bit of money on suspension, mapping, just to get them so they can do the job. Another bike on the list, I'd still look at an MT10. So MT10, still my maybe looking at it. Another bike high on my list was the Tuono, and I really like the Tuono. The motor's incredible, the ergonomics are incredible. Love the bike, love it. But it's so let down by the rear shock, and the factory version's got the electronic suspension. I just don't want to really be in bike development. And I'm not saying that I'm not going to entertain one of those. I need to have something else and then have maybe a second bike. But the bike is so held back by the rear shock that it's really not fun to ride. The motor's great, front end's great, all that's fine. But yeah, I just, again, didn't want to spend big money on something that I was going to have to start throwing money at, right, to get it to work. I looked at the S1000R, same thing, right? A little bit of an unknown on the newer platform. I know the tuning's a problem, and even the suspension's a little bit of a problem. So, and again, big money, right? They're 15, 17, 18, 20 grand. Haven't ridden the V2, then, the Street Fighter V2, haven't ridden one of those. Also kind of looked at it, same thing, expensive. Duke 890R, that's another one. Man, I was so close to pulling the trigger on an 890R, just because I know that bike well. You can go really well on it, and same thing. It doesn't really need a lot to do a lap time, but it needs a lot to get further from that lap time. And they do have some other issues, right? We've seen some issues with the motors on those. And I need something bulletproof that I don't have to think about. And the last bike, which is one that I'm not sure if I'll entertain or not, is the Triumph Speed Triple, right? It's big brother. I really liked that bike when I did the motorcycle.com test. I love that bike. I lapped it well. It was so easy to ride. There's massive potential in the motors with tuning. I mean, and yeah, you can get on them and go. They come with adjustable Olin suspension. You don't have to screw with them. Great brakes. Love that bike. So another one that was kind of at the top of my list, but still some unknowns. So yeah, I ended up settling on this 2024 Street Triple RS. I ended up buying one. I went out to get a new one and ended up buying a used one, low mile used one. The price was, oh my gosh, it was great. It was $11,000 out the door. And yes, I pay retail, right? So this isn't something where, anybody's giving me anything. I paid 11 grand out the door for it. And yeah, I think it was a pretty good deal. They did have a Moto 2 version that is just, again, I couldn't justify the extra 3.5 grand for the Moto 2 version, at least not right now. So maybe you'll see me with one of those. So, having ridden these bikes, and I've ridden the 2018 version, the 22 version, and now the 24 version, every single time that I've ridden these bikes, I've enjoyed them. They're easy to ride. You get on them and you don't really have to think much about the bike. You can think about your riding right out of the gate, and it's huge. They're just comfortable to ride. Everything, right? Is ergonomics perfect? No, we'll talk about that. But does it work well? Yeah. Is the motor crazy fast? No, but does it work well? Yeah. So it's a bike that you can go out there and literally on your first or second lap be up to pace and be enjoying yourself, right? Your hair's not on fire trying to make the lap time. So I think overall what this bike offers is that it's incredibly fun. It's easy to ride. You don't have to do much to it. And yeah, it can do a lap time. And again, lap time is relative, but we'll talk about that as well. So yeah, my first day was at New Jersey Motorsports Park. I bought it on a Wednesday, left it in the back of my truck, drove it to the track, rode it the next day, stock tires, everything. Had a decent lap time with it, did a lot of setup work on it, which we'll go into as well. And day two that I rode it, I ended up putting Dunlop Q5s on it. And yeah, huge difference. Not only just in grip, but also that helped out with the gearing a little bit, which we'll talk about a little bit with the gearing. So let's break it down. So I think the highlight of this bike is the motor. And the motor's fantastic. It it in this particular form, this very corked up version, um, comes off a corner incredibly well, which we'll look at in data. But it's so easy to ride. It it doesn't have any peaks or valleys, other than on top it's slow. I mean, the bottom line, on top it's not fast. So a little bit of an issue there, but I'm confident with mapping, pipe and mapping, that'll get taken care of. And I have some data on that I think I'll show you as well that will get us there. Yeah, it doesn't feel fast, but man, the exits are incredible. And the exits are easy, quite honestly. You don't feel overwhelmed on the exits, but yet when you look at the data, the thing is a ripper off the corners, absolute ripper off the corners. And it's, natural mechanical grip is very, very good. And yeah, the strength of the bike is how it comes off the corners, how you can roll through the middle of the corner. Absolutely unbelievable. So yeah, engine wise, it's just very friendly. Um, let's dive into the electronics part of it. I only really wrote it. So to be clear, I should have clarified this earlier. This is only about track riding, right? I'm not going to ride on the road. So if you're thinking, well, okay, this is how is this going to work for the street? Yeah, I don't effing know. This is all track riding. This is not a street review. This is a track review. This is a track review for how I ride and how I'm going to use the bike. So there you go. Yeah, electronics. I only use the track mode. And, track mode's got traction control, wheelie control, and ABS. And quite honestly, it wasn't until day 2 that I actually started to see the TC light come on. And even then, I really didn't feel anything that intrusive. I would say, again, I haven't, the pace I rode it, I was decent, but I still have some work to do in figuring out how grip works. But I would say, if anything, the TC might have come on a little bit late, but it was so soft that I really didn't notice it. So pretty impressive there. And again, it didn't come on till I needed it, that pace wise. Wheelie control, only felt it a couple times. I rode it in New Jersey Motorsports Park, and I felt it over the wheelie hill where I was trying to keep the thing, flat over that. And when the wheelie control did kick in, quite honestly, it was late. It was late and it was pretty intrusive. So I'll have to play around with that a little bit. But so far, the bike doesn't have enough power really to have wheelie control be an issue. I'm sure I could turn the thing off and do some wheelies. That's a good idea. I'm going to have to do that. But yeah, as far as wheelie control, the bike really didn't have an issue there. So ABS is interesting. So, the bike comes with stock steel braided lines. We'll talk about the brakes as well. But yeah, I never felt the ABS come in. And yes, I have room on my braking, but for the most part, even braking at a fairly high pace, I had zero issue with it. No issues with electronics in that regard. Quick shifter auto blip. Yeah. So honestly, this is one of the high water marks for any bike on a quick shifter and auto blip. Absolutely, positively seamless. Up, down, doesn't matter. This is one of the few bikes where I could delay a downshift in a couple of spots because I literally didn't feel the bike change at all. Like, I didn't feel any pitch. I didn't feel anything. One of the best shifters, electronically, that I've dealt with. Absolutely incredible. Worked low RPM, worked high RPM, didn't have any issues with it. So yeah, hopefully when I change rear sets on it, that will be an issue. But yeah, super impressed with the electronics. Let's talk a little bit about the dash and wind protection. Yeah, they suck. So wind protection, I need a little bit of wind protection. I do not know how these hooligans guys are riding these things with zero wind protection. Not good. So I'll add a little bit of wind protection to it. One of these little fly screens, I'll add something to it just to give me a little bit of wind protection. But yeah, the wind protection is absolutely horrific. Just not having any. The last day I rode it at New Jersey was windy, and yeah, my neck was killing me the next day. So yeah, wind protection is not great. Dash. it, the dash to me is not great. I mean, the tachometer is incredibly hard to read. I like all the options; they're actually fairly easy, even for an old guy like me. And yeah, I mean, the dash itself, just how you read it, looking at the tach, I really couldn't freaking read it. So, and I tried some of the different settings. I tried different colors. I did all that stuff, and yeah, it's just not that great. So, wind protection dash, yeah, not that great. So yeah, let's dive into the chassis and suspension. So, right out of the gate, the bike feels super light. It feels like a lightweight bike. It turns incredibly well. It's not twitchy, so the bike feels light, but it's not twitchy at all. I didn't even know it didn't even have a steering damper on it. It does not have a steering damper on it. I didn't ride it with a steering damper. Had no issues with it. The bike likes trail, so typically a Triumph thing, right? But offset on these triple clamps is much different than the Daytona ones. It actually has proper offset, and the bike responded really well. So when I first liked it, I just felt like there was too much weight on the front, and the front stayed loaded. The front wheel was tucked underneath of me on exits, right? I just didn't like it. So I kept raising the front, and I kept raising the front until pretty much I couldn't raise it anymore. And then I went a little too far, and then I backed it back down. And that made a tremendous difference. Yeah, so the bike likes trail. And again, we're on stock suspension, right? The bike's basically as delivered. In the front, not maxed out with preload, but pretty close. Compression's pretty closed off, and rebound is pretty interesting. So basically, the bike lacks high speed damping front and rear pretty severely. So if you try to close the clicker off to take care of that, then you affect the low speed too much. And then like at brake release, the front wheel feels like it's stuck down too much. So it didn't like having, in my opinion, it didn't like having the rebound closed off, but it does lack control on rebound at high speeds, especially over bumps. You have to wait a little second, right? There's kind of a millisecond or two where you're like, what's going on? And let things come back to you. So, and again, we're talking stock suspension. So I get it, but it wasn't horrible. So that's sort of the fork. Again, it works pretty darn well. For being basically a stock BPF fork, short stroke, the whole bit. Yeah, the rear is one of those Olin's STX shocks. And the only thing I did to the rear is kind of the same to the front, right? I added just one turn of preload, tried more, didn't like it. Did the balance of the bike became way off. So I just added one turn of preload to the rear. Compression, same thing. It's not all closed off, but the compression is pretty closed off. But I ran into the same problem with the rebound, which is the bike really lacks control over sort of the high speed bumps, right? Things just come back too quickly. The bike unloads too quickly. So having to be very cautious with that. So yeah, I mean, there's obviously some improvement that can happen there. So yeah, overall chassis, it turns incredibly well. It rolls through the middle of the corner incredibly well. What was holding me back a little bit, honestly, even on lap time we'll talk about the two big things, but one of them was lean angle, right? The stock rear sets. And I kind of got limited with having my feet on the ground. So, but yeah, it rolls through the corner amazingly well, incredibly stable on the brakes. Talk a little bit about the brakes, not much to talk about with those, but yeah, incredibly stable on the brakes, but it's from brake release through throttle pickup through the exit, the thing's absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. Yeah, such a great motorcycle. Gearing, yeah, I didn't like the gearing. Gearing was really short. And because the motor loses power so much on top, you can wind it out, but it doesn't do anything. So I felt like the gearing was short. Me personally, I'd like to have the gearing a little bit taller. Now with more power, right? Pipe ECU, when that eventually comes, we'll see how that goes. But yeah, the gearing was just a little bit short. When I did go to the Q5, 180/60 Q5, it was taller, and that helped quite a bit. But I'd still like to go taller. So also like to try a little bit longer wheelbase. So yeah, gearing's a little bit short. yeah, even coming onto the front straightaway at Jersey, if the wind wasn't there, I was in fifth gear going through the front straight onto the front straight at Jersey. And yeah, the motor pulled it fine. So the gearing's just a little bit short in my opinion. And I was in between gears in some spots. Yeah, brakes, there's not much to mention. I didn't do anything to them. Stock fluid, stock pads. I don't even think I adjusted the lever. I had no factor with the brakes, great feel. Um, yeah, they stepped their game up there. Absolutely amazing. I do have fluid and pads for it, which I'll throw in, but yeah, no factor with that. Ergonomics. Yeah, so we mentioned a little bit about the wind protection, but overall ergonomics, it's a friendly bike to get on. I may experiment with some handlebars at some point, but honestly, that's not a big deal. I did roll the handlebars back a little bit. But other than that, yeah, ride it. It's good. Yeah, no issues there. So let's get into some data. I have a lot of data to share. So let's get into data. So hang on with me while I set this up and we're going to talk about data. So I got a bunch of stuff to share with you. So let's start with this particular graph. So this particular graph is, hang on, let me get my drawing stuff set up here. Yeah, so this particular graph is me versus Moto America Racer, top 15 Moto America Racer this year at New Jersey Motorsports Park, right? Riding a new Gen 750. And when we look at this, yeah, we're lacking in the middle of the corner. So this top graph is, speed. This bottom graph is lean angle. And you can see, right, I just can't run the same lean angle as that bike. And that's what's hurting some of the mid corner. And it's just because basically my feet are on the ground. When I can do it, yeah, then our things are a little bit more similar. But yeah, part of what we see in the middle of the corners, I just can't run the lean angle that the other rider can. The slicks, race prep bike. This is still a stock motorcycle, but overall, pretty damn good. So the thing that really stands out is starting on the bottom is how this thing comes off of a corner. It's, unbelievable how well this thing comes off of a corner. It's crazy how easy it is to get the bike off a corner. Simple, runs great. Now, of course, everybody's looking at the top, right? And yeah, the thing's a turd. It's slow. Yeah, it's 23 miles an hour slower than the 750. Not great. Not great. Yeah, not great. So yeah, that is definitely a little bit of an issue. But before we get into that, I'll take you to another graph that kind of highlights this. So yeah, we'll skip to the end, right? If you want to improve the lap time on this bike, it's not with suspension, it's with power. So even with the suspension stock, this thing, if it had power, you would drop 2 to 3 seconds a lap and not have to do any, right? You wouldn't really have to do anything. When I looked at it from the exit of 10, basically from the exit of 10 to the start finish line, yeah, it was losing just over a second in that one little area. Oh, things just actually, it was like 1.2. Things just getting beat up. So anyway, that just shows you a little bit, comparing it to what a Moto America Spec 750 would look like. So now, hang on, let's look at another track with another street triple. And I wasn't the rider on the street triple on this one, but we got a bunch of good things to learn here. So obviously the Moto America 750 is in blue. You can see that. But again, if you look down at the bottom, right, you see we're not that far off. This was a near top 10 Moto America 750 this year. So, in the slower corners, that's what we expect. Not that far off. Yeah, in the faster corners, we're lagging a little bit just because, again, stock suspension. This particular bike was on slicks, so you can see a little bit of an improvement there. But same thing, right? It's just getting punched in the face on power. Obviously, just like New Jersey, the bike can brake very late. That's no issue. But yeah, on the power, when I did the quick math from the exit of 15 through where they let off for the chicane at the ridge, it was the same thing. It was almost 0.8 of a second. So yeah, power is clearly the issue there. Speaking of power, let's take a look at that. So I have something. Yeah, here it is right here. I don't want that one. I want this one. So this is a street triple coming up the front straightaway at the ridge versus a Daytona 765 coming up the ridge. And the Daytona 765 has a pipe in a flash. And yeah, I mean, it's over 7 miles an hour. But not only that, so basically the same motor, or potentially this street triple has a better motor, but the time, you can see just how much time gets lost there. It just really tough. So yeah, the Delta. So yeah, ironically, the street triple had a better lap time than this one, but all I did was to highlight the difference in speed starting, and it wasn't even starting from an equal point, right? The street triple had a better mid corner roll on this one. So yeah, even if it had a better roll and the power, we'd see even a higher speed. So yeah, the potential of this, I think is very, very high. Okay, so let's compare it to a few other bikes. So a big high water mark, as we know, is the KTM 890. This is a lap. I put the KTM in orange, like that. The KTM, this was also a stock KTM on Q5s. That was me riding the KTM. And I mean, that was like, wow, the KTM is something special. That, I mean, when we threw a leg over that, we're like, holy crap, this thing's good. And again, you can see, right, what does the street triple do well, right? It's, getting into the corner, its mid-corner speed is just absolutely phenomenal. And still here, yeah, earlier exit direction and better drive holds its own. And again, this is still a stock 2024. Holds its own even to an 890R. So again, the potential for the street triple in this world is, in my opinion, pretty high. So a couple more graphs we'll take a look at. Yeah, this last one is actually the previous high water mark, which was the FC1, and this is the FC1 is blue, the street triple is black. And the FC1 is not a slow motorcycle. It runs well. And yeah, it comes off a corner good with the FC1 does well as it gets in and out of the corner very well. But you can see, I mean, even in a really extreme condition, which is coming off the last chicane or coming out of the chicane at the ridge, street triple has got it covered coming off that, really kind of low RPM, low speed corner. Yeah, street triple's got it covered. And again, back to the middle of the corner. Yeah, it does well. So even though this was my particular best lap ever at the ridge on an FC1, the street triple basically had it covered. So there you go. Now hopefully you see why I chose the street triple. Price point is fantastic. It offers a massive amount of bike for the dollar without having to do anything to it. And, I think for how I'm going to use it, I do think it's going to limit me. I don't know how it's going to be on 2-ups yet. And I don't know how it's going to be when I have to go against some, higher horsepower bikes, even though the lap time might be the same. Once the lap time, kind of gets at that sharp end, I don't know if it's going to be a good bike at that point. We might have to look, I might have to go start back looking for something else. But the bottom line is it does incredibly well. And yeah, I just couldn't be more impressed with the bike. And I hope you found this kind of nuanced review helpful. So there's your review of the Triumph Street Triple 765.